Hey, I want to speak to you a little bit about middle adulthood, um, or early adulthood, I'm sorry, and socio-emotional development. Um, this is in chapters 14 and 15, several social aspects of what goes on here. But you have to understand where you are um, when you look at these kind of items. Um, you're not just some entity that suddenly becomes something. There's a background process, and that's what we're kind of going to look at right now. And some of this you'll be familiar with. Hopefully, when you took intro, this was mentioned to you. Some of these items mentioned to you. You probably didn't get a whole basket full of information, but at least enough to get you somewhat familiar with this stuff. So this is a lot of developmental uh, stuff showing up in early adulthood that the stage was set for in your early childhood and then beyond up to your present situation for most of you early adulthood. So let's do it. Temperament. Maybe you heard of that. Maybe you remember it. Temperament. It's an individual's behavioral style and characteristic emotional response to stuff. Anything. Any input. It's how you react to it. It's a style that's who you are. It's part of your personality. Your temperament is something that you are basically born with. So you don't have. Is there a learning curve? I guess is one way to put this. And the answer is maybe. You notice, I'm sure by now there are a lot of maybes in psychology. There's very little absolute. Nonetheless, temperament is something you're born with. Uh, Easy, feisty, slow to warm up are the three basic major categories that Thomas and Chess investigated and described. And then they've added some others, one or two others lately, but it's really only important to know easy, feisty, and slow to warm up. So that's what we're going to look at, and then we're going to move beyond that and give you even more in depth related to your socio-emotional development. So early adulthood, that's what we're talking about. You have fewer emotional swings than you did in adolescence. You're becoming more responsible. You engage in less risk-taking behavior. Now, this makes it sound like everybody's like wide open as a teenager, and then all of a sudden they settle down and everything's hunky-dory. That's not what's being said here. Talking in general terms, if you know anything about Jean Piaget and his theory, then you remember that there's this business of adolescent egocentrism or adolescent ego, and there are two kind of aspects to that: personal fable and imaginary audience. And I'm not going to go into great detail about those. It's just simply a way that you deal with the perspective you have on life. For example, in the personal fable, and I don't know why he chose these terms actually, because it's hard to make them fit, but he did it, I didn't. So personal fable, that's where you basically have this idea that you are invincible. You're Superman, Superwoman, and nothing seriously bad's going to happen to you. And also, you have the idea that nobody in the world has ever had the emotions that you're having, which is absolute nonsense. We're all human beings. I don't care if you live in Timbuktu or Taylorsville. You have the same emotions as other human beings have. It's what you do with them that differentiates it. So I have these same emotions, and mommy and daddy don't understand them because they're mommy and daddy. Well, let me clue you in. They had them before you did, when they were growing up. So everybody kind of goes through the same general set of emotions. A personal fable, though, goes a little bit beyond, because you develop that idea that, hey, I'm unique. I'm the only human being that thinks like this, that has this perspective, so on and so forth. And this invincibility attitude can lead to some serious problems, because that's where the risky behavior comes in. So early adulthood, fewer emotional swings in an adolescent, more responsible and less risk-taking behavior. That would be in that realm of personal fable, maybe. Do we take risks as teenagers? Yeah, probably, but not like it may seem like as being said here. Maybe you drive too fast, right? That's not a good thing. Or whatever it is you do. You do things, experiment with something, and all of a sudden you find out it had fentanyl in it. Those are the kind of things I'm thinking of, and it's really being discussed here, included here. What's mainly being discussed here is not as much on the wild side of risk taking as just more mundane things that you don't do now that you're in early adulthood, because you don't see any need for it. You don't need to attract attention if you've matured normally. I mentioned this imaginary audience thing. That's more self-awareness, more things like you walk into a room. It deals with self-confidence too, by the way. I walk into the room and I think every eye is upon me. Not necessarily. That's why it's called an imaginary audience. And most of these things, according to Piaget, you grow out of. But they have things, they have input, they have influences on your temperament. So I mentioned some categories. We have easy and difficult temperaments. Children with easy temperaments tend to be better adjusted adults. Children with difficult temperaments tend not to be very well adjusted adults. And then there's an aspect of inhibition. There's a third category that I mentioned a while ago, slow to warm up. That's a long way of saying shy. It's another way of saying inhibited. So children falling into one of these three categories, either easy and you adjust better to adulthood, to the life of an adulthood, difficult, you don't, and then this inhibition, you're withdrawn, you're going to be less assertive as adults. You experience less social support because you don't socialize, and you change your concentration, you change your focus. A lot of those folk like that become very stable as far as their professional work life is concerned. Let me say something else about this inhibition, about the shyness. Yes, believe it or not, a lot of people outgrow that. Some outgrow it because they have to. If you're shy and you want to be a school teacher, you're going to have to change a few things, because you can't be shy and be a school teacher. You can't be you can't be shy and be a salesperson, it's called now. Excuse me if I insulted anyone. I hope I didn't. So that's the inhibition. That's the slow to warm up business. So you have these three things that you are born with that, yes, they can be affected by external forces, i.e. parents, but by and large, that's the temperament you're going to have, And that follows you into adulthood. And then the end result of these things you've already heard. Adjusted, not adjusted, or inhibited. Now, there's a fourth quality or a fourth aspect here that brings with it quality. And that's ability to control your emotions. Woo! A lot of psychotherapy there, my friends. Control as a young child. If I can control my emotions as a young child, I would venture to say that it's going to be few and far between in some circumstances anyway. But if you control your emotions as a child, then you usually are a pretty well-adjusted adult, and you also control your emotions as an adult, and you become more resilient in dealing with stress. So it's a good thing if you control emotions. Emotional intelligence plays a role in that. And then the opposite is true. Less control. Then as an adult, you have less control of situations, and you're not as resilient. And you may be overly emotional about some things. So personality items or items that can be components of your personality. That's what temperament is, and that's what those are some of the outcomes of that. Now here's another one I hope you've heard of. John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, and their studies on attachment. Attachment, if we're talking about the effects of things as you becoming an adult, right? Well, attachment starts when you're an infant. And it's based on how you're taken care of, emotionally and physically. And Mary Ainsworth did an experiment called the Strange Situation. You can read about it if you haven't heard of it. And what she determined from that was several categories: secure, avoidant, anxious, and then you fall into the adulthood part of it where adjustments take place. So formed basically in the first year of life. If I have a secure attachment, that means that my emotional needs and my physical needs were adequately taken care of. Remember back to parenting, and you have authoritarian, authoritative, and then these indifferent parents and permissive parents, blah, blah, blah. Well, that affects your attachment. So if you have a parent who's keenly involved, intensely involved in you as a human being, particularly for the reasons that are obvious, they gave birth to you, and particularly in the mother's side of the relationship, because dads aren't necessarily as involved in some cases as moms are. Mom carried you 9 months. So in infancy, your emotional needs are met, your physical needs are met, you're coddled, you're hugged, you're taken care of, and you develop this security. You are secure in relationships, follows you into adulthood. You have more positive views of relationships. It's easy for you to be close to others because you trust them within reason. You're less likely to have these short little affairs and it's over with. You're not overly concerned or stressed about romantic relationships. You're trusting because you trusted your mom. Erik Erikson describes this that way. First year of life, birth up to 2 years of age, stage 1 of his, it's called trust versus mistrust. So I'm a trusting adult because I trusted my caregiver, probably your mom, because she took care of me all through my early years. So you don't mistrust others. You can have intimate relationships as opposed to insecure. An insecurely attached child has just the opposites of these: not trusting, suspicious, accusatory, so on and so forth. I don't have good relationships because I know my wife's got to be running around on me. because she's 5 minutes late getting home from work. So she's probably been out with some fella at a bar. Give me a break. But that's what happens to you because you weren't taken care of, needs weren't met in your first year of life by your mom. And that's the mistrust side of Erickson's theory. That's the insecure side of Ainsworth's theory. It's all basically the same. And then you may have an avoidant attachment. This is the standoffish. This goes hand in hand with slow to warm up. You're hesitant about becoming involved in romantic relationships because most of the time, part of the time, most of the time, a little bit, whatever, of your needs weren't met. So you may get into a relationship, but you keep that person. This is called arm's length. I don't think you can see it. It's my hand at the end of my arm pushing you away. It's a protective thing because you don't trust people to be able to take care of you because they didn't when you were in your first year of life. And then there's some others. Anxious. An anxious attachment would be an insecure attachment. Sorry. And these are clingy people. They demand closeness. They're less trusting. They're very emotional. They're very possessive. They're very jealous. I hope you haven't been in a relationship with someone that's like that because they'll drive you nutty. These can turn violent, by the way, unfortunately, if in extreme cases. So if you come through on the happy side of attachment, then if it's stable, you're much. There's a better chance of you being a stable adult. I had a thought. That's what I paused over. Attachment is pretty stable, but guess what? When you're an adult, you can look back over your early childhood and you can reassess that, and you can almost make amends. You can fix it here. Sometimes it takes professional help, but not always. You can understand better, maybe. Okay, I realize now when my mom was like she wasn't that she hated me. She had all these other things going on. She had to work all the time, or she was in an abusive relationship, or she was not in any relationship, or you pick the scenario. So that's the role that attachment plays in early adulthood. I hope you're getting a picture here. You're becoming an adult, or you have become an adult, you're in early adulthood, and all these little childhood things have followed you there. And that's what makes you who you are. Friendships, I think, friendships and those aspects are pretty misunderstood simply because people don't understand the effects of this attachment business. And finally, I'll wrap this up with the big four-letter word, love. Romantic love. It's called passionate love or eros love. Passion or fear of giving in to passion. There's positive sides and negative sides of this. You can experience joy, for example, or you can experience jealousy, depending on where you are on the spectrum as far as this attachment stuff goes. So this passionate love business, how long does that last in a relationship? Been a lot of studies, and the figures vary quite a bit. I meet somebody, I fall passionately in love with this person. A lot of psychologists say, well, that's fine. That's where it starts, but it needs to progress into a different kind of love, and I'll talk to you about it in a second. So passionate love, this eros love, infatuation becoming more than infatuation, becoming passionate, and then you can have a happy experience with that, or you can be insecurely attached and have a fear of that. I don't want to give in to this because I'll be let down, kind of an idea. Couldn't even make you angry about it. So you hopefully work through those challenges to this passionate love, or it goes smoothly and leads you into what's called affectionate love, companionate love. This is the love that you hope your passionate love progresses to, because what happens here is you have the desire to have someone around, and you're able to have deep, caring affection for the person. Romance gives way to affection, and then attachment can mess it up or it can make it work. It can cause anxieties, and it can cause conflict or withdrawal. Good attachment, as in secure, lessens that chance. It's not to say that it's 100%, but it can lessen the chance of that happening. Then it rolls over into what we call consummate love. You have elements of Pat. Let me interject something here. When passionate love becomes affectionate love, the passionate love doesn't turn off. Affectionate love is in addition to that. So I hope that clarifies any confusion that may have occurred here. And that all rolls over into consummate love. You have all of this: passion, you have affection, you have intimacy, feelings of warmth and closeness and sharing, commitment, a biggie. And then you're able to cognitively appraise a relationship. And you decide, hey, do I want to maintain this relationship, or is this not something that I feel is in my best interest? So it's a lot of stuff, man. But to get to where we're at with this socio-emotional business related to early adulthood, and there's a lot of other things, but I wanted to concentrate particularly on those areas. So I'll see you again soon.